It's R&R in the morning. You got something to say, it's easy to do it. Keep us the smoke meat phone lines. 656-3776, 656-ESPN, at the Twitters, at SA Sports Star. It's National Signing Day. That matters a whole lot for at least a year, but the NIL's come into play tomorrow. We have an expert for you, a good friend of the show, an NIL expert, really an OG in this part of the world. Sports Law is a book that he wrote, A Practical Guide to Protecting the Interests of an Athlete. His name's Luke Fedlam. He's the managing partner with Advanced NIL. Mr. Fedlam, welcome aboard, sir. It's going to be a busy day around the college football world, and NILs are playing a role in it. In your experience over the last 3 years, what's the difference in the flow of cash into the NILs, the collectives and all that? Have we tripled, quadrupled? How much money is flowing into this massive NIL machine around the country?
Sure. Well, first, thanks so much for having me.
Sure.
I always love being on.
Absolutely.
And I got to say, over the last few years, name, image, and likeness has formally been around since 2021, July 2021. And over the last 2 seasons, we've seen significant change because NIL collectives, let's be honest, didn't even exist during the first football season that name, image, and likeness was available to student athletes. So that has just changed the game in terms of the amount of money and the ways in which monies are flowing to student athletes. And this year, with this, signing day today, we're going to continue to see, large dollar amounts flowing to student athletes.
Luke, one of the big arguments for people opposed to NIL is the thing we hear people like myself, older guys, say, well, if I was 19 and I got $200,000, I wouldn't know what to do, blah, blah, blah. But I think now for people like yourself, for agents, the role, while it used to be, hey, I'm the agent, I get you your money and you go do what you want with it. But I feel like now more than ever, you guys are teaching, along with getting guys deals, you're teaching financial literacy. And it seems like guys aren't going, losing all the money once they get it more. Is it just more money or is it the financial literacy?
Well, there's a lot, just more education around the business side of sports these days. Even when you look at professional athletes over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been significant change in terms of the understanding, the sophistication of athletes getting involved in business opportunities. Mm-hmm. In my world, so I don't go out and find guys deals as an agent. My focus is solely on protecting them and providing that education. And so we've seen the level of education of young people increase. What's interesting is that we also have to focus on the parents as well, because as you look at things like today, National Signing Day, and high school students coming out, a big portion of the education also has to reside with the parents as well to be able to understand the business side of everything that's happening around these young people.
We are joined by Luke Fedlam. He's a sports attorney and a partner in Advanced NIL. Explain to us the process behind the NIL and when exactly that can be discussed in real dollar amounts with these new athletes for institutions. I mean, when can you start talking about the money that will be available to them and how much they're actually going to get legally as opposed to what we believe is going on?
Right. So procedurally and according to the rules, name, image, and likeness is not to be used by the institution or by donors, boosters, or NIL collectives to induce a student athlete or promise a prospective student athlete a certain amount of money to attend a particular institution. Those are the rules. Right? So the rules say, hey, we can tell you if I'm a coach, if I'm recruiting you to come to my institution, I can tell you about the deals that players on the team currently are doing, ways in which the school has partnered with different companies, different collectives to be able to bring deals to players. But I can't promise you, hey, if you come here, I'm going to get you $500,000 or I'm going to get you $750,000. But we also know that, but even before name, image, and likeness, rules were broken in terms of recruiting. So we can't expect that, now because of name, image, and likeness, everything is going to be done on the up and up. But that's the process and the timing. So once a student athlete signs, so they sign and they say, okay, I've exhausted my eligibility in high school. I've signed on that I'm going to this institution. Let the deals begin. Okay. And I guarantee you that today we're going to see deals get announced shortly after players sign on to schools.
But what do you do as a coach? Because let's be clear, Luke, it's no longer recruiting, it's free agency. For the 4 and 5 stars, I would say for the 4 and 5 stars, it's free agency. So as a coach, what do you do? Because these kids are asking and their parents are asking, how much money are we going to make? So I don't know the way around doing it illegally, because every coach is having to answer that question when they walk in these living rooms.
Sure. So I think one of the things that the coach has to do is be able to talk about what is it that other players are doing? What is it that collectives and other groups of donors and others who are investing in name, image, and likeness for student athletes at particular institutions, what are they currently doing? And a collective could absolutely have a conversation with a family, and not even necessarily just a collective, a company or a brand could have a conversation to say, hey, this is what we're thinking about for someone like you. This is what we would like to, potentially put together for someone like you. We can't promise you it. We can't put it into a contract for you until you've exhausted your eligibility and are ready to sign on to a school. But you can talk about what deals could look like if you want to skirt that line of, I can't promise you anything, but I need to let you know what's out there available for you if you come to our institution.
Luke Fedlam joining us, obviously the NIL expert, and you're an advocate for the athlete, which I appreciate coming in on this side.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as an advocate for an athlete, and as I hear coaches from Mac Brown at North Carolina, what do you say about his quarterback being lured away by by other schools of known recruiting prowess? We've got Jeff Traylor here in San Antonio who's crying foul as well. But that's to the benefit of the athlete. The athletes are getting offers that are their just desserts. This is what they've earned for what they're bringing into these institutions. And as we know that there's something coming down the line, and you can talk to that as well. As an advocate for the athlete, what would you say would be a proper imposition of some sort of firming up of the rules and penalties for dealing with the NILs and when they're available and how they're used to bring players onto campuses?
Sure. What we've seen really is the combination of the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness coming about around the same time.
Right.
You've created this quasi-free agency. And I just say quasi because it's not full free agency. When you look at the pro levels, free agency has its rules, its timelines, its anti-tampering guidelines, etc. And so we've created something that doesn't necessarily have all the rules, those guidelines. Those having rules around a free agency-like model is helpful for everyone involved. It is helpful for the student athlete because it helps them understand how to effectively navigate. Because I've talked to a lot of parents and players who are overwhelmed sometimes by the phone calls, the people coming at them and trying to have them go to different schools, and just the pressures that come with that. So having rules around this is good, but here's the point. The bottom line is you have to enforce those rules too. And that's been the challenge. You can look at, there are a lot of schools that even before NIL that people will look at and say, yep, what they're doing from a recruiting perspective really doesn't go along lines of the rules. But if they're not being enforced, no one's stopping them. So there has to be an ultimate enforcement of the rules. And to be honest with you, I don't think that's the NCAA. I think ultimately that gets to a point where potentially an agency of the government may be involved because, ultimately Congress is going to be the one that would have to act in terms of really putting kind of federal law around what name, image, and likeness looks like and beyond.
So help me out with this. If said player signs with Rudy J's Bunless Burgers and week one, he, God forbid, tears his ACL, is Rudy J's Bunless Burgers still on the hook for his monthly payment?
It's on the contract.
Is that all worked out in the deal?
Sure. So it is in the deal, and they're still on the hook, but then that player is also still on the hook for whatever services they have to provide. So let's remember that, number one, with name, image, and likeness, you can't have performance-based indicators or requirements in the contract. So it can't be, hey, based on number of starts or based on number of touchdowns or number of interceptions or whatever it may be. It's based on services related to their person, their name, image, and likeness. So promoting on social media, showing up and doing appearances. So as long as that student athlete, even though injured, continues to provide those services, then that company's still on the hook.
Luke Fedlam joining us here on San Antonio Sports Stars. You can tell greatly knowledgeable in the NIL game. He's a non-agent sports attorney. Where is the money coming from? We know that, corporations stepped in. I know the Miami had a health club that stepped in, and a variety of other institutions have had big entities step in and offer money. But the collectives have grown, as you mentioned. As far as the money in totality, where is it coming from primarily? Is it business or is it the alumni and the fandom and the consortiums?
It really is a combination, because when we talk about name, image, and likeness, oftentimes we get stuck on these big deals that we hear about that are primarily on the football side. Because keep in mind, basketball is even very different than football, because on basketball side, if you have somebody that could warrant such a large payment amount, 6 figures, 7 figures and beyond, that's most likely a player that's going to be a one and done player, only on campus for 7 or 8 months, headed off to the league to play. So that's very different than football, where you're going to be on campus for at least 3 years. So when we look at where the money is coming from, oftentimes the big dollar amounts we're seeing come from these collectives. When you look at name, image, and likeness in totality for student athletes, there are a lot of smaller business owners, alumni, fans, etc., that are saying, we just want to help out. Maybe I played lacrosse or played soccer at this institution, and I want to help out the soccer players at that particular school, and I want to do some deals with them. So we're seeing that, but also for some of the larger deals that are the national brand deals, those are companies that have done national deals with pro athletes and other celebrity figures before, so they're used to this.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us to nitpick the negative in NIL, Luke, but I don't think we've talked enough about the positive, whereas a lot of these guys and ladies aren't going pro, right? So
correct.
So what happens is you're making some okay money in NIL, and you look up and it's cap and gown time. We're not talking about the enticing of possibly, like, we have a young guy down here named Frank Harris. I don't know if he's going to the pros, but why not stay in school? Why not further your education? You're making some pretty good money in the NIL.
Absolutely. And that's what we're seeing across the board for a lot of student athletes. We know most of them are not going pro. And so now the ability for me to have a camp or a clinic in my hometown and put some extra money in my pocket, to be able to do smaller deals, or to be able to maybe start my own business that I wanted to start before, to sell a product or provide a service. Student athletes are able to do things now that can really set them up. If they are educated, which I will always get onto the soapbox to talk about, as long as they're educated and understand now financial literacy, financial management, and making smart decisions, they could leave school either, without having school loans, or, with a little nest egg to set them up for the future.
Luke Fedlam, his book is Sports Law, a practical guide to protecting the interests of athletes. And I know there's some parents out there today who are sending their kids out there about to sign and put it on a fax. By the way, you know why are they still using fax machines? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, help us, Luke. Help us.
Listen, I wish I could, fellas. I try to have all the answers for you. That's one I can't answer.
Okay, just curious. Hey, Luke, we appreciate the knowledge. Make sure you're following him today, and from now on, if you're not, it's at Luke Fedlam on Twitter and on Instagram. Again, his book, The Sports Law, a Practical Guide to Protecting the Interests of Athletes. Thanks for the knowledge, Luke. Take care of yourself. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. Look forward to it.
Good interview, man. I feel a little bit, I'm smarter now than I was earlier.
Yes. I mean, again, I don't feel dumb anymore, because Luke doesn't even know why they use fax machines. So if Luke don't feel dumb, if Luke don't know, I don't feel dumb.
It's the stuff that matters the most.